check out a little soldering demonstration. How does that sound?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, soldering is the process, by definition, of joining multiple pieces of metal with another kind of metal that melts at a lower temperature. So this stuff right here is solder. Solder comes in wire or plates, like little thin sheets, and we cut it up into tiny little pieces. Now this was made by an 8th grader. It's a money clip, kind of a little bit more than basic, but the bottom was copper, and then the top two pieces, numbers that he soldered on here. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do this. This one I made in college, and this one is like 35 separate solderings. So this is like really advanced. Anyway, you're going to need a few things. First of all, here's my project. You got to have at least 2 parts. You could have 25, or you could have 2, depending on how elaborate your project is. And this is the soldering stand. This stuff is flux, and this helps the soldering work when we're heating up the metal. You're going to need this solution here, which is called pickle. It's like a real mild acid, and it'll get off the icky fire scale that's burned on your project after you're done. You need to pick things up with tongs. You need to place everything with little tweezers. Okay. I'm going to need a volunteer here. Anyone?
I guess you're looking at me.
All right, Dylan, put the safety goggles on. Now, you probably, when you get your parts cut out, you'll find out that you have to really do a lot of sanding to get it as clean as it possibly can be. These have been sanded pretty good, and I cleaned them off with soap and water. Then I'm going to set it on the soldering stand. That's what this thing is. Paint the flux on there. Could you do that for me, Dylan? Just paint it right on both parts. Just right on the tops of both parts. And then this is probably the most painstaking part of the whole process, is to place the little pieces of solder on here. If you've ever tried soldering like with somebody that did plumbing, they got to clean the metal parts up, and then they use solder wire, and they kind of melt it and smear it on. This is a little bit more intricate work, and if you put too much solder on, it will leak out onto your project like a little puddle. And if you could see this right there, Dylan, there's like a little puddle of silver solder right there. So we got like 2 little chips here, and then we're going to carefully place our parts, and that can be a tricky thing too, placing everything exactly the way you want it to be, because when you heat it up with these torches, just a conventional hardware store torch, it's going to like heat up and move around, and in any movement you have to push back with the tweezers. It's hot, so we got to be really super safe. Anyone got any ideas how hot it might be?
Real hot.
Real hot. All right, good one. It's like over 1,000 degrees.
Spicy hot.
So it's like seriously hot. Okay, you ready with the torch here?
What?
Now this has got an automatic lighter.
All right.
And this is the one that's not automatic. You do have to be very careful when you're working with this, because the heat does come out pretty far. So if you're moving around, you just don't want to burn anything that you shouldn't burn. I'm going to start it, and then Dylan's going to take over. Now, the best way to hold it is with 2 hands. And this is just a hardware store torch, so it's not totally accurate. When you get up to Craig High School and take metalworking up there, they'll have more precision, more advanced stuff to work with. So I'm just going to slowly heat up my piece of metal, and Dylan's going to do this just the way I'm holding it like this, and then controlling it with the other hand. And see that little blue tip? It's just off the top of the piece of metal. Now if you have a bigger project, it's going to require more heat. It might need 2 torches. And whatever we do, we want to make sure that nothing gets bumped or moved, so slowly heating it up. And if you were up here close, you could see that the metal starts turning colors when it heats up. And it's going to start actually turning like dull red, then kind of like an orange, and then a bright yellow orange as the project gets way up over 1,000 degrees. So get a little bit like that. Keep it moving. Now, what'll happen is the two pieces of metal have a little hunk of solder between them. When that melts, it'll go flat, and you'll be able to see the silver solder run right along the edges. You see that, Dylan, right there? Yep. So, believe it or not, that's it. So turn the knob to the right. Now we know that everything's pretty hot up here, so put the torch kind of out of the way. The soldering stand's really hot, so I'm going to take these copper tongs, and you're going to do this. It's going to go into the acid here, and it's going to splash. So you want
Splash
to kind of stand out of the way when you're dropping it. Yeah. Soldering.